But maybe where we run into a problem is that we don't know what His Word is saying.
That's true.
So we're expecting something to happen that really doesn't line up with His Word, and then we get upset with God because it's not happening or coming to pass.
And you know, honestly, that's one of the things that pastors deal with the most is, Pastor, why is this not happening for me? Or why is this happening to me? And they want God to fix it. And that's right. You know, we want God to fix, you know, our situation. But when God speaks to them and gives them specific direction and it doesn't make sense, then they just walk away. And it's like, okay, that's not going to work. And they're not willing to really hear God and then be obedient in that. That's what pastors deal with a lot, is just people who, well, what did God say? I could probably count, I couldn't count how many times I've had to just say, well, what did God say already? And they would say, well, God said this and this and this and this. Well, what did you do with that? Nothing. And what is it that you want me as your pastor to do? I don't know. Well, just do what God told you to do. Because if you do what God tells you to do, His Word that He said He would do, it will come to pass, what He said.
So do you think that maybe people think just because God said it,
it's done.
And it's done. He said it, I've heard it, so that means it's just going to be. I mean, do you think that's is that where the thinking is?
Absolutely.
Well, God said it.
Sure. But I think when it comes to, some people think God is a puppet master, and we're all on little strings, you know, and He's pulling all the little strings, and that we're not involved at all in the process of our lives. You know, well, and it's the Doris Day song, well, Sarah, Sarah, you know, whatever will be, will be. And I think there's a lot of people who are fatalists and just say, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So it doesn't matter what I do or what I decide, what I choose. But the power of choice is the greatest power on this earth that God has given to humans, is the power to choose. Every other power belongs to God, but He's given man the power to choose.
Maybe it's just, I mean, I guess what we need to learn to understand is that if God has said it in His Word, then it's a reality for us, even though we may not feel like it, look like it, think like it. Somehow we've got to take what He has said to be a truth, accept it by our spirit as a truth, and then believe if we act according, because some of this stuff is conditional, that if we do what He says, then it will. Yeah. It will. There's no way that it cannot. Now, obviously, it's not going to be in our timing, because it never is, because it's always now, and it's usually later with God. Not late, just at a later time in His timing. And there are some things that He just decrees that are.
Immediately.
That are, because He's decreed it.
That's right.
You know, let there be light. Poof. And it was, you know. And so there's some things that He's decreed that are going to be no matter what. And then yet there's other things that He decrees to us that we have to respond in some way, shape, and form and act upon for them to become active. I guess that would be a good term. To activate them, to bring them to life. They already have life in them, but we need to act accordingly to what it says to make it active and manifest in our lives. So we struggle with that.
Yes. You know, I think that maybe even a good picture that people could see is if you've ever played checkers or chess. And the rules of checkers or chess are you can make a move, and then it's my turn to make a move. If you make 2 moves in a row, that's called cheating, right? Yep. And it doesn't work. And if I make 2 moves in a row, it's the same. Well, it's amazing to me how people want, in their spiritual life, they want God to make all the moves. And God will not make all the moves. God will move, and then we respond to that move. Now, and here's another thing. People try to outguess God right?
Uh-huh.
Or try to strategize, like they are actually in a chess game against God, when we have to understand really it's for us and not against us. But God most often says, here's, I do this. Now what are you going to do with it? And then we move. Maybe his move is we're reading along and a promise from his word really gets highlighted to us in our reading or whatever. It just really stands out to us for a situation where we can apply it immediately to our lives, and he gives us that by the illumination of the Holy Spirit. And now he says, okay, here, that's my word. That's what I'm thinking about. What your situation is. Now, what are you going to do with it? Now, is it his move again, or is it your move?
Yeah, we fail to move on that. Maybe we figure because he said that and said, okay, so, okay, you said that, okay, I receive it. Okay, now what's the next thing?
Yeah.
What's the next thing, God?
But see, then it's it goes back to it's become is information to us.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what God said about that.
Uh-huh.
That's good. That's promise number 463, in the Bible. That's good. I got that one. I got that promise, And we think that somehow if we have a promise book or a promise box, with I have the promises of God. No, you don't. You have pieces of paper with words on them. A promise isn't activated, or isn't yours until you activate it in your life.
That's what I was going to say. We need to activate it by an action. Maybe here's a thought, and I think I touched on it a couple of weeks ago, and what I was speaking about. A lot of that misunderstanding comes from not taking some of the very basic things that God's already declared to us about who He is and who we are. We haven't grabbed a hold of some of those very basic things to understand this is what God has said about me, so this is who He says I am, and now maybe I need to say it so I'll believe it. Because sometimes that's what you've got to say things over and over again. For all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, duh, and it becomes alive inside of us. And maybe that's where we miss it. We're trying to take some of these other things of God first when we haven't grabbed some of the very basic things of who we are and who He is. And like once again, back to the kingdom in which we live, and He's the King, and now we are His King's kids. If we don't grab those things, it's I don't want to say almost impossible, because God can do anything He wants, but I'd say almost most of the time it's impossible to grab these other things until you've grabbed a hold of these first.